Alrighty, everybody, welcome back to the live stream here on the channel. Glad to see a lot of you guys returning back on in here today. We've got a lot of new information from specifically the National Hurricane Center. Before we get on into all that, let's see what we have on in here today. We have Cloudman, Storm Dakota. We have Sam, Caden, Legacy, David, Haley, Pete, as well as Ponderosa. And we also have Angela in here as well. And everybody else who is watching may not be chatting, or anyone I may have forgotten. Market in here, Jonathan, Indiana, and Brian, as well as LWX24. And yeah, glad to see everybody back on in here. Proxy as well. Let's go ahead and switch back to, or rather switch to our main scene, because we're just starting up the live stream. It's going to be a bit of a doozy to try to keep alongside with all the information we're going to be talking about in this stream. Lot of stuff to go over, some new information, of course, and we're going to start out with the National Hurricane Center on what is now potential Tropical Cyclone 9 out here just to the east of the Yucatan Peninsula, south of Cuba, and this is going to be a very unique forecast. The reason why I say this, if you look at the cone of uncertainty, currently the National Hurricane Center is forecasting one of the most rapid intensification phases they've ever forecasted in the eastern Gulf of Mexico. So that is, right off the bat, that is absolutely ridiculous, because we go from a mid-tier tropical storm to a major hurricane in about 36 hours. A tropical storm to a major hurricane in about 36 hours. You can see it here, Wednesday morning to Thursday afternoon here. So about 36 hours, that thing jumps from about, we'll estimate, 60 miles per hour sustained all the way up to 120 miles per hour sustained. That's a 60 mile per hour jump. Absolutely insane, the forecast that the National Hurricane Center has put out. Their other forecast was 5 miles per hour less, but this one is definitely a lot more important, because they've introduced that M for a major hurricane. And you can see we have tropical storm warnings out for Cuba and for the Yucatan Peninsula. Hurricane watches are also out in those pink areas for Cuba and the Yucatan Peninsula, with tropical storm watches now out for parts of the Florida Keys. I'm going to try to take this information slowly, because there's a lot of stuff that we have to get through. I did see someone say a tour possible severe. I'm just going to go look at that briefly, because there is severe weather happening today. I do want to just take a peek at that. Okay. Yep, that's about all I needed. Let's go right back over to the National Hurricane Center. So that's their cone of uncertainty. Another thing I want to note with this, the cone of uncertainty does not include how large the impacts could be. There is two different scenarios with this system, and we're still trying to figure out exactly what the wind field is going to be. Our newer model runs have a more compact Category 3, Category 4 hurricane hitting Florida, whilst we have some other model runs that show a more large wind field. But the point being is, this is the big thing here. Impacts will not be limited. Impacts will not be limited to this cone of uncertainty. You guys out here in Florida Keys, out there in Cape Coral, out there south of Tampa Bay, you guys are going to see most likely tropical storm impacts, if not maybe even some instances of hurricane impacts as you get closer to that center, closer towards like Tampa Bay, Tampa up there entering the Big Bend area. And then, of course, where they are currently forecasting that landfall to be, which is just barely off, I believe, to the west-southwest of Tallahassee, Florida. I think Tallahassee's somewhere near my cursor. I'm not for sure, but I think it's right around my cursor there. And yeah, this is definitely going to be the worst system we have seen so far in 2024 in terms of a hurricane for the U.S. Now, it's not the worst, at least forecasted to be the worst system we've seen this season, because we had Beryl, which had, that was obviously a Category 5 hurricane, but this is expected to be the first major hurricane to hit the United States, and it's the first major hurricane forecast in the Gulf of Mexico this year. I want to take you guys over to the flash flooding potential. This is for day 1, 2, 3, 4, and day 5. So all 5 days of potential flash flooding. The main thing you want to look at is that yellow area. That is where you have that level 2 out of 4 for flash flooding. This extends all the way up to my house out here to the south of Martinsville, Virginia. It goes back towards Knoxville, maybe even includes Legacy out there in Tennessee, up towards northeastern Mississippi near, I was going to say, yeah, near Tupelo, back down south just east of Mobile, Alabama. And then that slight risk continues down through Charlotte, through Savannah, Georgia, just to the west of Jacksonville, Florida, all the way down to well south of Tampa Bay. And then you see that level 3 area. We talked about that in yesterday's live stream, that at some point we would see a level 3 risk for flash flooding introduced. This is going to be for the day 4 outlook that they have that moderate risk introduced for flash flooding. The potential for significant to catastrophic flash flooding is present over areas mostly centered in Tallahassee, Florida. Also, I want to note here, the governor of Florida has issued 41 counties worth of a state of emergency. The entire, nearly, if not the entire panhandle of Florida is now under a state of emergency. And then every county down the left side or the west side of Florida. So this includes Key West, Naples, Cape Coral, Tampa, Spring Hill, Cedar Key. You guys are also all under a state of emergency now. 41 counties under that state of emergency. I believe it goes all the way as far northeast as Sanderson, which is a county to the west of Jacksonville, Florida. So a lot of counties under that state of emergency. But now we're going to go ahead and go back over to, that's your rainfall outlook from the WPC, but I want to go into rainfall potential now. This does look quite a bit different because it's actually from the National Hurricane Center's outlook. Currently, they're forecasting some isolated amounts, upwards of a foot of rainfall. However, that's currently offshore. The closer we get, the more we're going to know in terms of the flash flooding potential. But the general ordeal here is far coastal areas of western Florida into nearly all the panhandle of Florida. You guys are looking at rainfall totals of 4 inches or greater, and just south of Tallahassee, where this system will most likely make landfall, that's where you're looking at some isolated areas. Potentially, as we get closer, they'll probably end up raising that closer to a foot of rainfall being a possibility. But there is still some uncertainty in our track we're starting to see some southeast shifts. A very real possibility is we could see landfall as far as southeast is just barely north of Tampa. That is a real possibility. And then other real possibility is as far west as closer towards like Pensacola, closer to Pensacola, Florida. But at the moment, the most likely scenario is, like I said, just to the south of Tallahassee. So that's what we're gonna base this entire forecast off of from the NHC. That's what it's based off of, is a landfall just barely to the southwest of Tallahassee, Florida. They do already have storm surge being a possibility out here for the Florida Keys. You are going to see this increase as we get along the western side of Florida. Now, for the Florida Keys, you're probably still going to end up in that forecast of 1 to 3 feet. However, most likely by the time we get to landfall potential, the National Hurricane Center is going to start. We'll just use this map, for instance. The National Hurricane Center will start increasing areas of storm surge along the western side of Florida, and we'll most likely see the introduction of a 9 to 12 foot storm surge somewhere in the Big Bend area south of Tallahassee. And that's going to be most likely what's going to end up being your biggest issue, is that storm surge. We're going to be looking at, if this does occur, we're going to be looking at another Adalia situation like last year, where we had that category 4 impact the Big Bend area. We'd be looking at that type of storm surge, 12 to 15 feet. However, there is still some uncertainty on the exact track of it. It's going to vary big time. If we see landfall here, southwest of Tallahassee, that's going to be that worst case situation for storm surge. If we see landfall here north of Tampa, that would definitely minimize the storm surge for the Big Bend area. However, it would drastically increase storm surge for like Tampa Bay. So there's still some uncertainty on the storm surge side of things, but regardless, we're going to see 9-foot storm surge somewhere between the Big Bend area of Florida down towards Tampa Bay. And to back this up with some more, quote, evidence, I suppose, here's the National Hurricane Center's product. This is their potential storm surge updated for their new second advisory. This was just updated, so this is the potential for storm surge. You can see they have some areas in blue there, which is 1 to 3 foot storm surge in Key West. If we go along the western side, you can see we could see upwards of 9-foot storm surge in areas of Cape Coral. Well to the east, by the way. This is going to be well to the east of where landfall will be. Because, like I said, our track here from the cone of uncertainty is going to be way out here, but you're still going to see potentially up to 9-foot storm surge out there in Cape Coral, all the way through Tampa, and you'll see in Tampa Bay, that's where your impacts start getting significant in the Tampa Bay area. And the more north we go, you'll see in the Big Bend area, that's where it gets very, very significant. I do want to turn off. There you go. That's what I wanted to show you. There you go. That shows you how significant it's going to be out there in the Big Bend area. Potentially, if that major hurricane forecast verifies, we may be looking at significant to catastrophic storm surge being a real possibility. All these areas, if that major hurricane forecast does verify, most of these areas are going to be completely inaccessible for days on end. That is if the National Hurricane Center's forecast does verify, and you'll see the storm surge tampers off very rapidly as you go west of the Big Bend area, because right now the National Hurricane Center is forecasting landfall generally right here. So therefore, all your storm surge, especially your worst storm surge, is going to be focused in that Big Bend area just south of Tallahassee, Florida. So that's just to give you an idea of just how significant storm surge may be if we actually are looking at a Category 3 plus hurricane here, and it actually happens. That storm surge is going to be by far the biggest issue, in my opinion. I'm sure the National Hurricane Center will note that as well. It's going to be the biggest issue with this system. And I think we went through most of our products here from the NHC. There's your arrival time of wind speeds. That's another thing I'd like to touch on here. If you are in the Big Bend area of Florida, preparations need to be completed. Keyword here is completed by 8 p.m. on Wednesday, because tropical storm to hurricane force wind speeds could approach the Big Bend region of Florida as early as midnight on Thursday morning. So just make sure that you are starting preparations now if you are anywhere along the western side of Florida, and if you are anywhere in the panhandle of Florida. So this whole area here needs to start with preparations for the potential of a tropical storm, and especially if you're in the panhandle, to hurricane force wind speeds. Miami is going to probably be the area with the least impacts out of this entire system. Because you're on the far southeastern tip of Florida, I don't think you're going to end up seeing too much out there. A good chunk of this region here, that's going to be your safe place in Florida. This area should see minimal impacts as we eventually move into Wednesday and Thursday. Any chance this shifts east? For sure. Definitely a chance that the entire forecast here from the NHC shifts east. Currently, they're forecasting major hurricane to make landfall just to the southwest of Tallahassee. Some of our models show that this could shift potentially as far east as north of Tampa. So it definitely could shift more east. That is a very real possibility. A westward shift is extremely less likely, but a more eastward shift is definitely a possibility. Right now, the NHC, like I said, they're really forecasting. This would probably be your worst case scenario track here. A major hurricane going right into the western side of the Big Bend area of Florida. That would just bring an absurd amount of storm surge to the Big Bend area of Florida as well as Tampa Bay. So they're really forecasting a near worst case scenario in terms of that track. Now the intensity, that's definitely, they're not forecasting a worst case scenario. This is kind of our, this is honestly may even be a little bit on the conservative side. But that just shows you the high ceiling we have here. All of our hurricane models now indicate Category 5. A Category 5 is going to happen. But some of those hurricane models, as we discussed in yesterday's live stream, they have a big bias towards overdoing intensity. So currently the NHC is going to be on more that low end. The NHC is almost always conservative. So if their conservative forecast is calling for a major hurricane, that's a really big issue right there. Let's see here. Northwestern Georgia, wind and rain impacts. Yeah, you're definitely going to end up with some potential flash flooding impacts as we go into Thursday evening, overnight into Friday. I don't think gusty winds will be that big of an issue, but you're probably still going to end up with some gusty winds right around, gusts upwards of 40 miles per hour out there. It's a little difficult to tell exactly the extent of flash flooding potential and damaging wind gusts up there because first we got to figure out where it's going to make landfall in Florida. PM, it's not a potentially serious situation. No, it is a serious situation. A major hurricane is a life-threatening situation for people in its direct path, which I'll go ahead and show you guys the cone of uncertainty on here so you can see it from a more zoomed-in view. It is definitely a serious situation. You do not want to take this system lightly whatsoever. We've all seen what the Gulf of Mexico can do, and this is definitely going to be a high-end, potentially a high-end ceiling event. So that's where they're forecasting landfall right now, like I said, just to the southwest of Tallahassee, Florida. There's your rapid intensification phase. Tropical storm on the morning of Thursday. Or wait, what is that? That's really enough. I'm denying that phone call. I get phone calls whenever I start live streams, y'all. But yeah, this is going to be for Wednesday. So tropical storm on the morning of Wednesday. And then in the afternoon of Thursday, you're looking at a major hurricane. That is a massive jump. Like I said, intensifying potentially. I believe this is tied with the most intensification the NHC has ever called for with a tropical system in the eastern Gulf of Mexico. I mean, that is just not intensification you see often at all. And like I said, this is on the conservative side of things. I'll go ahead and show you an instance of a non-conservative model run. The NHC is obviously an official product. They're not a model run. They're not a model run, but I want to just show you the ceiling that we are looking at in the Gulf of Mexico here. I think most of people, most of you guys who have looked at model runs today are probably going to know the model run I'm about to show for a high-end ceiling event here. This is the 12Z HAFSB Hurricane Model Run. 12Z model runs are typically accurate. They are some of our better model run datas that we receive. Our 00Z model runs will be better thanks to Recon, but 12Z is still something that that is a it's still a good model run. There you go. So this is your extreme high-end ceiling, okay? I want to note that this is unlikely to happen, but just for an example of what the Gulf of Mexico can do, here is the HAFSB, takes it as a Category 4 hurricane as it enters the Gulf of Mexico, and then from there on out, it is an absurd intensification process on your HAFSB model run, going all the way down to a 888 millibar. That would most likely be, I don't know what Hurricane Wilma had, but that would be right with historic levels of the strongest hurricane we've seen ever in the Atlantic or Gulf of Mexico. I do want to note, we do see some models like this every now and then, but a model of this magnitude being this aggressive in the Gulf of Mexico, it's not common to see something showing an 888 millibar. And there's your Category 5 landfall in Florida. And whilst no other model run shows an 888 millibar actually intensifying other than the HAFSB, I just want to show you guys these as well, just to get through them here of your landfalling. We are getting some new model run data in now, but here's your HWRF model. That shows a Category 5 landfall. Here's your HMON model. That shows, guess what, a Category 5 landfall. Your HAFSB, as we showed already, that shows, if we go ahead and go out here, all the way out, a Category 5 landfall, and your HAFSA hurricane model, which, again, we're getting new models, which is why you're seeing that, also shows a Category 5 landfall. And this does actually get down to an 899. The HAFSA is another one that gets into the 800 millibars. I don't see a way how we're going to get even remotely close to the 800 millibars here in the Central Gulf. But I just wanted to show you guys, the potential we could be looking at. I pray that this is going to change a heck load at 18Z and it's going to downtrend a lot. But all of our hurricane models are showing a Category 5 landfall, and that is something you cannot ignore. Now, something you do want to, take very, very lightly is an 888 millibar model run. But all of your hurricane models agreeing on a phase of extreme rapid intensification, I mean like some of the most rapid intensification we've ever seen, as well as a Category 5 landfall, that is not a trend you can just throw out the window and ignore, especially since we are legit probably about 80 hours away from landfall out here in Florida. But we are starting to get those newer models in, just like yesterday. We all know the HAFSB is going to be the first one to render in, so I will keep that up. But yeah, just unfortunately a high-end ceiling event here. Before we dive on into anything else, we have over 160 people watching right now. First off, I just have to say thank you for watching. That is greatly appreciated. I'm glad to see you guys here. Hopefully we are reaching some people from Florida. If you are in the path, this cone of uncertainty, you should prepare now. Don't wait until it's too late. You should prepare immediately. The governor already has issued state of emergencies for everybody inside that cone of uncertainty on the coastline of Florida, and more areas even outside that cone of uncertainty are also under state of emergencies. So don't wait to prepare. Go ahead and prepare today and tomorrow. But before we continue on, we have about 38, 39 likes here. So if you haven't already, make sure you hit that like button, share the stream. Those are the two things that matter the most because it will push us out to more people. And if you are new, subscribe to the channel with the notification bell set to all because we're going to be doing these briefings tomorrow as well. And we'll, if that forecast does verify at 2 p.m., we will definitely be live for a good chunk of Thursday tracking this thing making landfall. Southwestern Virginia, so you are kind of close to me. Southwest Virginia, I don't think you're going to see much impacts at all. Flash flooding is going to be your biggest issue out there for sure. In terms of like damaging winds, tornadoes, that stuff's really not going to be even close to a possibility. You're really just looking for flooding out here in Virginia. Where do you see the reflectivity on tropical tidbits? So, mine's different. I know sometimes it's on the bottom, but you just have to click precipitation, and then it's MS, LP, and precipitation. That's your simulated reflectivity. which this is your GFS model run. I want to note that I saw Sam say that the GFS is downtrended. These are global models, okay? Once it is designated as an invest or a potential tropical cyclone, you do not want to use these global model runs really for forecasting. It's still good to note them because you have more tools in your toolbox, but they're not going to be nearly as accurate as what your hurricane models are going to end up being like. So these global models, you don't need to throw them in the trash can. You could still take note of them. Just remember, it's a PTC now. That means your hurricane models are rendered in, and those are going to be the model runs that we look at the most. Which is why, the National Hurricane Center is not forecasting a low-wind Cat 2 landfall, because they know this is the GFS model run, and now we're getting close to the point where this model run is going to start handling things poorly. And I'm sure the European model, same ordeal there. A 983 millibar. I'm going to be completely honest here. I don't see a scenario where we see something as low end as a Category 2 hurricane. I think a low end Cat 3 is our low end ceiling at this point. You could see that from some of I believe these are our new intensity guidance models here. A Category 2 hurricane, that is now like your absolute lowest of low possibilities here. Your most likely scenario is a mid Category 3, if not greater than that. I don't really know why we have so many models that are going as low as just a tropical storm and just a Category 1 out here, when it's already looking better than probably what most of these models even initiate it at. So I definitely would not trust anything beneath a Category 1. These model runs that show less than a Category 1 and even a tropical storm being peak intensity, I don't see even a possibility of that happening. Unless we see some miracle occur where it gets thrown into the Yucatan Peninsula, which I haven't seen a single model run show that, so I just don't see a way that can happen. Do you think this can still hook east towards Tampa? That is a very real possibility. However, I want to note this. Regardless of where it makes landfall up here in the Panhandle or Big Bend area of Florida, Tampa is going to be seeing potentially significant impacts, especially from storm surge. Storm surge out there in Tampa Bay, you're going to see a lot of storm surge and probably significant as well. So regardless of where it makes landfall, Tampa needs to prepare, preferably now and into tomorrow, because it's like I said, don't pay too much attention to that cone. Impacts will be felt outside of that cone of uncertainty for sure. In terms of a landfall happening in Tampa, I don't see that on much of a possibility, but a landfall closer towards like Spring Hill, I do think that is something we can't fully rule out. You can see Spring Hill just to the west is still in that cone. I don't think it's likely, but a landfall is still possible anywhere from north of Tampa all the way towards east of Pensacola, Florida. Fort Myers, that's very familiar. Isn't that like down here? I'll just go ahead and look it up. I could tell you, I'm pretty sure, I'm confident Fort Myers is on the western side of Florida. So, yeah, you should start preparing tonight. If not, if you can't prepare tonight, definitely prepare tomorrow. You're going to be seeing the potential for some moderate storm surge. I think the NHC on their forecast we were just looking at, it's like some of them have upwards of 6-foot storm surge, I believe. We'll look at that in just a second. But flash flooding, storm surge, and tropical storm force wind speeds will all be a possibility as we go into Wednesday. Very, very late tomorrow into Wednesday. So this thing's going to be moving relatively on the faster side of things. Today's Monday, right? Yeah. Today's Monday, yeah. So Monday is the 23rd here. So, yeah, your earliest tropical storm impacts, earliest tropical storm impacts could be Wednesday. But most likely you're looking at Thursday. I did confuse my dates. I apologize for that. So you're looking at actually late Wednesday into Thursday for your tropical storm impacts to begin out there. I confused the dates. Don't know why I thought today was the 24th. How reliable is the Icon model? It is pretty reliable if you don't have a designation of an Invest or PTC. We have a PTC, so I would stop really looking at those global models. Like I said, you could still, you could still note what they're showing, but your Hurricane models are going to be the ones you want to listen to. And the fact that all 4 of them are showing Cat 5 landfall, that is something. And 2 of them show a historic Category 5, getting beneath 900 millibars into the 890s. So I really, really hope that you guys are ready out here. So right now, that might be confusing. Thank you for pointing that out. Right now, the forecast from the official National Hurricane Center is Category 3. The NHC is always conservative with their forecast. They're going to go with more of the lower side of things. So the NHC, an official forecast, is calling for a landfall of a major Category 3 hurricane, but models are hurricane models, are models that are built to simulate the intensification and process of hurricanes, are showing Category 5s. So a Category 5, that's the ceiling. I don't want you guys to think a Category 5 is going to happen, but that is the type of situation you want to prepare for. Is a Category 5, like I've said before, prepare for the absolute worst case scenario and hope for the best. Right now, like I said, the conservative side of things is a low-end major hurricane. This is most likely going to change. The reason why it hasn't, this is probably another reason why they haven't upped this forecast. This intensification phase here from the Yucatan Peninsula to Florida, that is a near historic rapid intensification phase. A tropical storm of 60-mile-per-hour wind speed sustained to a major hurricane of 115 in 36 hours. That is a type of scenario you hear from like the Western Pacific. So if they increase it any more than that, their forecast is literally going to be a historic intensification process as the NHC's forecast. So that's why they try to keep it on the lower end, but I mean, I really wouldn't be shocked if this changes a lot and they increase that 115 to something way higher than that. I'm talking about the Eastern Gulf of Mexico cloud, man. So, just to get to that question one more time, the official forecast is Category 3. That is why you see the title of here is Major Hurricane Expected. It doesn't say Category 5 expected. It says Major Hurricane Expected because that's the NHC forecast. And they're currently forecasting a landfall of a major hurricane. The next NHC update is 8 p.m. Eastern in about an hour, 13 minutes, and we will be live for that. I believe that will be an intermediate advisory, but I think that's still going to update all your products. So this is, like I said, will definitely be the biggest storm so far of our hurricane season. I can't say if we won't see a storm worse than this. Hurricane season's definitely not over yet, but this is definitely going to be way bigger than the impacts that Beryl, Francine, Debbie, all of our hurricanes that we've seen so far. It's going to be much bigger than that, for sure. I can guarantee that one. There's no way, like I said, there's no way we see anything less than a mid-tier Cat 2. Briefly just want to go over this. We do have a rapidly intensifying hurricane in the EPAC here. I do have to disagree with the National Hurricane Center on this being a Category 2. Very well-defined eye, very well-defined tight core. Most likely a Category 3 hurricane out here in the Eastern Pacific. And the reason why I mention this is because I can't help but notice on Twitter is a lot of people are starting to think that John's outflow here, this is Hurricane John, Major Hurricane John, or eventually going to be Major Hurricane John. You can see they're forecasting that Cat 3. But a lot of people I've seen on Twitter think that the outflow of John is going to shear off this system. That is simply not true. The outflow from John is going to move more like this, okay? So outflow from this system is basically just like the winds that you see here, the convection, and that can correlate to wind shear away from the system, which if if this here, which is PTC 9, if this was towards like, I don't know, this area of the Yucatan Peninsula, it would be getting sheared apart, but John is just simply too far away. The difference between this band here and PTC 9 is over 800 miles. So there's no point where we should see a weakening phase with this system. We should continue to see strengthening with this thing throughout from now on out. It should just continue to strengthen. Now it's going to be gradual for the first, the next 24 hours or so. It's going to be gradual. We're not going to see rapid intensification in the next 24 hours. You can see here it's a PTC now, tropical storm very late tonight into tomorrow morning, gradual intensification to a high-end tropical storm very late tomorrow night, and then that is when we see it very late tomorrow night into Wednesday is when we start getting that rapid intensification process. Tropical storm, Category 1, Category 2, Category 3. Within 36 hours, it goes from a tropical storm to a Cat 3. And that's what's going to make this system hit every headline, most likely. Just that phase of extremely rapid intensification. And like Catman was pointing out yesterday, I didn't think that this would actually track through the perfect area of ocean heat content, but unfortunately it is. We have this narrow area of very favorable region for intensification for ocean heat content, which is the, how hot those ocean waters are beneath like the surface. So, we look at your sea surface temperatures. Ocean heat content is how far that goes and how hot it is beneath that surface of the ocean, which is in return, the hotter it is, the more likely you are to see rapid intensification, as long as other ingredients are agreeing and favoring that rapid intensification phase, like we have with eventual Hurricane Helene. Yeah, we're going to have I imagine we're going to have a few areas of center relocation over the next 24 hours or so. I don't think we're going to just keep that low pressure. It's still not vertically stacked. This is where you have a mid-level circulation evident, and your lower level circulation's generally out in this area. So it's definitely not vertically stacked, which that is a big old sign of it's not going to rapidly intensify anytime soon. But I'm telling you, this is going to look completely different tomorrow night. It's not going to look this disorganized. There's going to be a lot more convection on the western side. Yeah, I wouldn't be too surprised, Catman. PM, you can't be so for certain, but Pensacola, yeah, you're probably not going to see much impacts from this. I don't think you guys are fully safe, but you shouldn't see any major impacts. Probably some isolated flash flooding is going to end up being Pensacola's biggest issue, and maybe some gusty winds, unless we see a drastic shift westward. But the western side of your hurricane, that's a least impacted area. So, your hurricane safe, it's just completely like a circle like this, a buzzsaw. You're still going to see impacts as far west as like Panama City, but areas more towards like Spring Hill, these areas would still see more storm surge. Storm surge is a whole lot less likely on the western side. Tornadoes are a lot less likely on the western side. So overall, it's better if you're on the western side of your hurricane. Also, your eye wall, it's always that northeastern quadrant of the eye wall that's the strongest. Lake City. Now that area, I actually had a friend who lived in that area. He moved because he got sick of hurricanes. He moved, I think, 2 years ago. He got sick of all the hurricanes. And yeah, that area definitely going to be seeing some isolated damaging wind potential for sure. At least tropical storm force wind speeds will be possible. Maybe even hurricane force wind speeds. Flash flooding. And you are on the east side, so if we do see landfall towards like south of Tallahassee, Lake City would be an area of concern for potential potential tornado threat. So Lake City definitely needs to watch. You are currently under a state of emergency from your governor out here in Florida. I do know you are under a state of emergency that far east, which, long story short, just prepare. just prepared. Main thing is make sure your family knows that there's a hurricane. A hurricane's eventually going to hit somewhere to your south, southwest on Thursday, and you're going to be seeing impacts from it. Make sure, you know, you're, like the NHC says, you have enough fuel, your electronics are fully charged, get some extra supplies just in case you end up without power. But definitely the main area that's going to be, unfortunately, most likely inhabitable for a couple days is going to be those coastal areas where you see storm surge. I know that's a bit of aggressive wording, but a major hurricane unfortunately does that. Especially in the Big Bend area, you are looking at, if this does happen, you're going to be looking at probably 9 to 12 foot storm surge here, which is something you guys have seen before. It is something y'all have seen before, like, Adalia last year. Yeah, I wouldn't blame you for moving, that's for sure. I would not blame you. Here's the Weather Prediction Center's rainfall forecast. And I want to note two big things here. One is, look at the widespread significant flooding potential, all the way from my house up here in Virginia, all the way towards eastern Alabama, most of Georgia, a good chunk of Florida. That's going to be areas where we're going to see 5 to 7 inches of rainfall. And then in this little area here, 7 to 10 inches of rainfall on the very coastal areas, as well as the western side of the Appalachians. And you even see that, I believe, I'm not for sure, but I think that might be one little speck right there of 10 to 15 inches of rainfall being a possibility. That tiny little yellow dot on their forecast. Now, that's not going to be there tomorrow. It may expand more or may shrink. Yeah, don't go on a vacation. I would not, if you do have a vacation planned for like the coastal areas out here in the Big Bend, I would, I personally, now you could, seek information from your airline and your local officials and what people think out in this area. But if you have a vacation scheduled for the shoreline regions here, I would not go. A major hurricane impacting coastal areas whilst you're on vacation, to me, sounds fun, but to the general public, that definitely would not be fun. Eventually, I'm going to end up planning a vacation around that. My vacation is going to actually be going to a coastal area. But I'm not ready to chase a major hurricane. I'm not going to chase this because I haven't had enough experience. I wouldn't go to Florida for a major hurricane, not at this point in my life, because I don't have enough experience in chasing hurricanes yet. Especially not when they have curfews out here. I've heard the curfews in this area are very strict when it comes to hurricanes. Orlando, Florida, yeah, you're definitely going to be hit with some rainfall, for sure. Maybe some gusty winds upwards of 50 miles per hour, but your main risk is definitely going to be flash flooding and rainfall out there in Orlando. It's definitely not as big of a risk as more to your northwest, but isolated areas upwards of 4 inches could be possible. 4 inches of rainfall. But yeah, we're just gonna, like I said, we're gonna wait for the NHC update here as well. But first, we're gonna go over to NHC. Will update in about an hour. We're gonna look at our new models because most of them should be rendered in here. Honestly, a good chunk of them should be rendered to where this gets in the Gulf. This is your HAFSB, and yeah, okay. So they're just now. Some of these are just now starting to enter the Gulf for your new hurricane models. That is pretty far west too. Well, I mean, the 12Z had that as well, so we'll see if that happens, if it's that far to the west. HAFSA isn't that far out yet, so we still have a while to go before these really get going into the Gulf. And the 18Z for the HWRF hasn't even started in. My favorite personal hurricane model run here is the HMON, and that's starting to render in now. We have about 71 likes, just over 200 people watching. If you haven't already, hit that like button. The more likes we have, the more we'll be pushed out in the YouTube algorithm. and reach more people with the word of this information. I greatly appreciate you guys tuning in. Like I said, if you are watching from out here in this cone of uncertainty, make sure you are preparing for major hurricane impacts as we go into Wednesday and all of Thursday. Other areas that should also prepare is the far western coastal regions of Florida. Two main regions that will probably see localized significant impacts will be the Bay. I don't know exactly what Bay area this is, northwest of Cape Coral, and especially Tampa. Those are two areas that could see localized significant storm surge. But yeah, that's a look at your current PTC 9 and just a big blob. Your centralized low pressure is generally up here, somewhere around in this area at this point, maybe a little bit more to the southeast than that. But this is going to try to get organized gradually over the next 24 hours. And then as we go into Wednesday morning, it's going to start rapidly intensifying. Let's see. South Carolina, I don't think South Carolina is going to see much from this. In terms of the tornado threat, it's just a little bit too much uncertainty there. At the moment, the NHC is betting on that far banking to the north-northwest. So I'd still monitor it if you're in South Carolina. But really, at the moment, the only thing I'm confident is in some localized flash flooding out there in the entire state of South Carolina, with the least area probably going to be Myrtle Beach. That's going to be the area with the least chance of seeing flash flooding. Yeah, but I was talking about in terms of tornadoes, PM. Just a little too much uncertainty. Yeah, like I said, I do think it could shift as far east as just barely north of Tampa. I don't see it shifting so far east to the point where we're looking at landfall in Tampa, but a landfall all the way south, or as far southeast as near Spring Hill, that could be a very real possibility, as well as a landfall as far west as like Destin, Florida. But that's your cone of uncertainty. Remember, that's where the low pressure, the potential track for the low pressure is. So if the eye of your hurricane ends up, tracking right here, well, obviously that whole cone is going to shift well off to the east. So impacts will not be limited to the cone of uncertainty. Especially in Tampa, pointing south, you're going to be feeling impacts. And at the moment, you're not in that cone of uncertainty. So impacts will be felt outside that cone. 00Z hurricane models, those don't really, I think they start rendering closer towards like 12:30 a.m. Eastern. Right now, we're getting our 18Z models in. I wouldn't be too surprised if it goes more east, honestly. I'm a little surprised the NHC actually pushed it on their 5 o'clock advisory. So their 3 o'clock advisory had a more landfall like this, whereas on their 5 o'clock advisory, you can see here it's more like this. So they actually pushed the landfall more to the west, the potential landfall location more to the west on their newest advisory at 5 Eastern. No, I don't think you'll get into the cone that far, Haley. That's a special weather statement to my north. Oh, okay, Pete. I mean, I made a map of it. Do you know how many counties that is? Is it 41? If it's 41, I already have a map that I made earlier of state of emergencies. Let's see here. Let me go ahead and show you guys the list of state of emergencies right now. So this is currently, I'm going to, just for a precaution, because I don't know what this is going to show, I'm going to black the main screen out for just a little bit. All right, there you go. So that's your list of state of emergencies right there in pink. So those are all your counties under a state of emergency. Like I said, all the way towards Key West, goes through Monroe, all the way up to the entire panhandle of Florida. That's all the areas of state of emergencies in effect. I made this close to like 3 or 4 p.m. Eastern. 3 or 4 p.m. Eastern is when I made this list. So there may have been some areas added on to that. But yeah, thank you, Pete, for reminding me that. So that's definitely a very large chunk of Florida under those state of emergencies, again in the pink. And that is that's actually not too early. You know, last time he issued it, like I swear it was like almost 5 days in advance, 4 or 5 days in advance before it was forecasted to make landfall in Florida. I think that was with Debbie. And yeah, this one I think it's right around, like I said, right around 80 hours out from landfall. Let's see. Orange County was added. I'm not surprised. He'll probably continue to add some more too. I don't think that will change too much. Let's see if I can find. Yeah, there's Orange County. Well, if Orange County was added, I'm sure Lake County was. Because Orange County's in, like, that's middle of Florida right there. That's central Florida. I think that's one... I don't know this area too well at all. But yeah, I think that's, isn't that near Orlando? Pretty sure it's near Orlando. Oh, hold on. Let me quickly do this. Give me just a second. So, yeah, let's go back over to our hurricane models here. We're getting some newer data. Now, this is 18Z, so it's not the best hurricane models that we see. The 00Z models are going to be much better tonight. I'll see those in the morning. I'm not going to stay up that late. Not when I know I've got a long day on Wednesday and Thursday, most likely. So let's go to your HAFSB, see how far out that's gone. Okay, well, look at that. That actually has landfall in the Yucatan Peninsula. So if that happens, it would temporarily weaken the system. You can see that in probably about 5 a.m. on the 25th is when it would start weakening / making landfall. And then it really doesn't recover all the way until a whole 12 hours later. So that would inhibit strengthening for about 12 hours. Now, I don't think it would weaken it rapidly by any means if it made landfall there. It just really stopped the strengthening process. That's about it. So say it makes landfall as like a 988 millibar, it would probably move off the coastline of the Yucatan Peninsula at like a 989 or 990, like that right there. It wouldn't really weaken it that much. You don't think it's going to head that far west? It wouldn't surprise me. I mean, it really wouldn't surprise me if it does go that far west. I mean, the NHC doesn't have that area inside the cone at the moment, though. So you are correct with that. I mean, the NHC doesn't see that as a possibility at the moment. Maybe they will change that tomorrow. Welcome to the stream, Chip. Glad to see you back in here. So I'll be curious to see if that changes the landfall location on the HAFSB. If we go back to your 12Z, it made landfall. The 12Z one made landfall pretty much to this. That's like southeast of Tallahassee, right? Yeah. Yeah, that's just to the southeast of Tallahassee. We'll see if that's a little bit more west on your 18Z in terms of landfall location. But that we're still going to have to wait a while. This is not going to finish rendering probably for near another 40 minutes or so. Like I said, we're going to stay live for that 8 o'clock intermediate advisory, 8 p.m. Eastern. If y'all haven't already, again, make sure you hit that like button, share the stream with your family, friends, social media, and if you are new, you could consider hitting that subscribe button. It supports the channel, especially if you want to rejoin. If you subscribe, YouTube will probably end up recommending my live stream when I'm live next on your feed there. Is this thing actually going to hit Illinois? I mean, Illinois is probably going to get some rain out of it, but Illinois is not going to be seeing anything like tropical storm wind speeds or something like that. That's just going to be where the remnants of your low pressure is going to track up that way. The main thing you're going to see up there is some rain. Yeah, I've seen that too, Brian. I don't know. I don't exactly know where that center is, but I feel like it is a little bit more east than what the NHC has for their cone. If we look on your infrared satellite imagery, they have, well, it's about 7 o'clock. This is your 2 a.m. advisory. This was your 5 p.m. advisory. So your low pressure would be right about here if the NHC, if their cone is still on track here. That's where your low would generally be. Which I think it's just slightly more off to the east, southeast. I don't think it's that big of a jump. I don't think your low pressure is like here. I don't think your low is in this blob of convection. Your low is probably somewhere in and around this area. It'll be really interesting to see if that convection continues into tomorrow morning. There's what I think is probably a major hurricane at this point in the EPAC. Look at that thing. That's much stronger, in my opinion, than a low-end Cat 2. I could tell you that's not a Cat 2 because remember Francine that we covered live? That was a low-end Category 2 hurricane, and it looked really, really rough. It definitely did not look like this. No way. I would be blown away if that is a Category 2. Low-end Category 2. Yes, there's the new experimental cone. However, I'm not going to use that much until they start issuing those watcher zone warnings for inland Florida. Polk County. Let's see. Let me go ahead and find out where that is. Oops. Okay, so you're under... or you're over here in southeast. I don't know exactly where you are, but you're somewhere around Lakeland. You are slightly more inland, so that's the good news. You shouldn't be inside those significant impacts from storm surge because, well, you are inland. But I do want to check the rainfall forecast. Yeah, I think rain's really going to be your biggest issue. You could see upwards, keyword upwards, of 4 to 5 inches of rainfall out there. As well as some gusty tropical storm force wind speeds, probably near 60 miles per hour. But hopefully that center tracks well enough to your west to where you don't end up in those tropical storm wind speeds. So main threat is really rain out there. I don't think you'll see much flash flooding. It should be more of, just a long period of light rain. So flooding shouldn't be as big of an issue that inland. Yeah, you're, let's see if you're in that slight risk. You may barely be in that slight risk, so it could still be some isolated flash flooding there. Okay, yeah, you are in that slight risk, so flooding could be a possibility. It definitely could be a possibility. So once again, I'm going to reiterate here because I know we get new people tuning in here. If you are in this cone of uncertainty, specifically the cone, but also out here in Tampa Bay, you should start preparations today and tomorrow, as a major hurricane is expected to impact somewhere up here in the Big Bend panhandle of Florida. Most likely we'll end up seeing, at least, in my opinion, at least a low-end Category 3 major hurricane make landfall. So that would include the potential for very significant to possibly catastrophic storm surge along the far the most of the Big Bend area, possibly into Tampa Bay. The potential for some isolated tornadoes will most likely be a possibility east of where this thing makes landfall. Significant flash flooding is already a very real possibility. You'll see here on that day 4 outlook, they already have that moderate risk for excessive rainfall in place. Take this all out. So if you're in that red area, that's a moderate risk for excessive rainfall. That means the potential for significant to maybe even catastrophic flash flooding will be a possibility out there. And of course, hurricane force wind speeds, potentially wherever it makes landfall, sustained wind speeds of 115 miles per hour with gusts potentially even upwards of 130, unless, and it will change, but unless the NHC changes that forecast for intensity, I'm not going to say anything more than that. They're going to change it eventually, but at the moment they are keeping that at a 115 major hurricane, and gusts could approach up to 130, and that's miles per hour. I feel like that's because our models aren't really for sure where that low pressure is originating at. So your models are jumping around more. Once we see that tropical storm form, our models are going to get better. We have a PTC, so our models are already, somewhat better than... They're definitely better than what they were yesterday morning, for sure. Our hurricane models rendered in yesterday evening. But I think we really have to find out where that low pressure is actually at before the models end up becoming very accurate. Which is why I'm not trusting that intensity as much. Yeah, you're welcome, Reaper. You guys are under a tropical storm watch out there in Key West. Let's see here. Madison, Florida. Oh, no. John and future Helene definitely won't merge. Definitely not. Yeah, Madison, Florida, you're definitely in that risk for significant to potential catastrophic flooding. Now, when we have a moderate risk for flash flooding, most of the area ends up with flash flooding, and only a couple areas, if not maybe not even a couple areas, actually end up with that significant to catastrophic flooding. Typically, it's one area that gets really unlucky and ends up in a band of your hurricane, and that's the area that you see significant to catastrophic flash flooding. For instance, with Francine, it was New Orleans that saw that area of catastrophic flooding. With this, which is going to be future Helene, I can't tell you where at the moment, but Madison definitely need to prepare today and tomorrow for hurricane force wind speeds, potentially sustained wind speeds right around 100 to 110 miles per hour. Gusts could exceed that. The potential for a couple tornadoes will most likely be at least a possibility out there. Pending on exactly where it makes landfall, and definitely flash flooding as well. Fujiwara, no, they're way too far. They are way too far apart. If John was right here, yeah, we'd see a Fujiwara effect happening now. But John is still over 800 miles away from the low pressure out here to the low pressure inside the eye of John. Yeah, I guess we're probably going to have some rain showers. Maybe some rain showers would end up hitting our AOI out here, but it's something that's going to, like, alter the course of this, weaken it, or help it rapidly intensify. John's not going to play a role in that. I mean, look at that thing, though. I just don't see that being a Cat 2. I don't know why they have that at Cat 2. Like I saw on Twitter, and I saw in some other places, people were talking about the outflow, potentially sharing areas of PTC 9. That's just not going to happen. Now, it was on the table yesterday, but today it's a lot less likely because John's going to continue to move very slowly inland and dissipate very, very rapidly. Tuesday afternoon, tomorrow afternoon. What's the most ridiculous hype on this system on Twitter so far? Somebody saying an 850 millibar landfall. That's what I saw. I saw someone saying an 850 millibar landfall couldn't be ruled out in Florida. That was the dumbest thing I saw on Twitter. It was probably by somebody who's not even at the age requirements to be on Twitter. Let's see here. Johnson City, Tennessee. Yeah, you're going to see some flooding impacts. You are going to see some flooding impacts for sure. We're now, we're obviously starting to get closer, so I could tell you for sure you're in that flash flooding potential for both day 4, which is Thursday, into day 5, which is Friday. Definitely going to end up with the potential for some flash flooding out there. You could see rainfall amounts out there, potentially around 3 to 4 inches of rain. Yeah, if you hear anybody saying a Cat 6 is going to happen, just don't even listen to them. The Saffir-Simpson scale goes to a Category 5. That's as high as it goes. The Cat 6 does not exist. Even if we saw, the strongest hurricane we've ever seen, it's the NHC still wouldn't classify it as a Cat 6 because it doesn't exist. But yeah, I obviously I agree with the NHC on this becoming a major hurricane. I'd be pretty surprised if that didn't happen. And I do believe we could see, my personal opinion, I think we could potentially reach near that Cat 4 status. I don't want to say anything greater than that. Whilst models are very aggressive with Category 5s, most of them have Category 5s. I just think the hurricane models may be intensifying it too quick out here in the Caribbean. And they're also bouncing around with that low pressure. So most likely scenario is definitely a low-end Category 3 making landfall in Florida. But you got to remember, it's the Gulf of Mexico. It's September. It's a very favorable environment. It's going to go into a stage of rapid intensification. And no kidding, what an eye wall replacement cycle could do. The high-end ceiling is definitely Category 4, maybe even greater than that. But like I said, just make sure you're preparing for, unfortunately, that worst case scenario, which an absolute worst case scenario would unfortunately be. Worst case scenario would be a Category 5. So you do want to prepare for that absolute worst case scenario and just keep your fingers crossed for the best case scenario, which is something goes wrong with that eye wall replacement cycle, or it ends up over the Yucatan Peninsula and it weakens enough and it's too far west. There's a few things that could happen that result in that better case scenario where it doesn't intensify to something like a Cat 3 or 4, or the worst case scenario. There's still a couple uncertainties. But, I mean, we'll see. We will see. The NHC's forecasting. They're forecasting that major hurricane potential, so that is the expected outcome. The expected outcome is a phase of very significant rapid intensification Wednesday morning all the way until landfall on Thursday afternoon into early evening on Thursday. What should we expect in Orlando? So probably not going to see a whole lot out there. Some gusty winds could approach 50, near 50 miles per hour. Your main concern will be very isolated flash flooding and the potential for up to 5 inches of rainfall. But you should not be inside that area of greatest, significant impacts. Your impacts in like Central Florida would actually be in West Central Florida. This area here, that's where you're going to end up with some significant storm surge, most likely. Some areas could even get near 9 feet. And then in that Big Bend area, that's where I was talking about potentially 9 to 12 foot storm surge. I'll go and show you guys the NHC's forecast again. I forgot to show that. Let me show you their storm surge forecast here. That is a model run. I'm pulling it up on my other screen right now. And here we go. It's going to be this product here. So the red areas you see here, is where they're already anticipating the potential for storm surge to be near or above 9 feet. And that red area is pretty much the entire area of the Big Bend of Florida for significant storm surge. And you'll see some of that significant storm surge could also get into the Tampa Bay area and maybe even as far south as near to the northwest of Cape Coral as well. And then, of course, it tampers off as you go further to the south. So, yeah, that's the storm surge forecast there. 9 feet is in the red, 6 feet is in the orange, 3 feet is in the yellow, and then I believe 1 foot is in that blue. That's a lot of red. If you couldn't tell, that is a lot of red. A lot of red in the Big Bend. And like I said, this is generally they're forecasting landfall somewhere around here about Thursday, late Thursday afternoon, near 5 p.m. Eastern. So west of that, you're going to see a whole lot less storm surge. But this map is going to change. Some of this red could shift more to the west. The entire red area in the Big Bend could shift more to the southeast if we end up with the potential for a more southeastward landfall. Or if we end up with a southeastward landfall. Like I said, we could see landfall anywhere from near Destin, Florida, which is more to the west, all the way down to just barely north of Tampa near, what was that area I used? Spring Hill. West of Spring Hill. I don't believe the area that was hit by Ian is going to see, they're definitely not going to see the worst impacts from this upcoming major hurricane. But unfortunately, you're still going to see some storm surge in Cape Coral. Hopefully, it won't be as bad as what they're forecasting near 9 feet. Let's hope it won't be that bad. But you could see just how much storm surge is a very real possibility in the Big Bend. That's definitely an area that sees more enhanced storm surge for sure. Let's see here. Panama City landfall. Let's see. So I won't give you a % chance because I don't do that. But our Panama City, Florida. Like this area here. So I definitely would not rule it out. I'm not going to give you a percentage, but I will say this. You should be preparing for major hurricane impacts out there in Panama City. It's definitely a real possibility that you see landfall out there. A very real possibility. All right, I want to go back over here. This is your HAFSB. Oh, wow. Now, that is a big downtrend. That is the biggest downtrend I have seen in a while from this model run. We went from a 888 millibar at 12Z to barely even able to hit that Cat 3 peak. That is a Category 2 right there, landfall. That is a ridiculously wild downtrend. I would not trust these 18Z models. Like yesterday, how we didn't trust them all showing a major hurricane Category 5. These are the 18Z models. I wouldn't trust them either. 18Z just simply is less accurate. Now, if 00Z shows this, then I'd start to really think, fingers crossed, maybe it would be a better scenario with a non-major hurricane, but hopefully, and we'll just see. Hopefully we get some better data, though, at 00Z, because I just don't feel like these are going to be good for forecasting. And here comes your HAFSA model. I mean, just look at how much that low pressure bounces around so much on the hurricane model. It just bounces around ridiculously. Louisiana's good. We're rolling out Louisiana now. The Euro model is more accurate. However, like I said, we have a PTC now, which allows the hurricane models to render in. So your hurricane models are going to be the best models to look at. But the 18Z and 06Z of any model run is always less accurate, less dependable. Let's go to your HMOND here. Yeah, there's your HMON. That's the model run that I personally like the most. I like the HMON model. And yeah, that shows the exact intensification that is very real, a very real possibility. That is a real possibility there. Same goes for the HAFSA and B. I mean, it being that weak is also very much possible. But like I said, these are 18Z, so I just I wouldn't take them into account as much. Typically, though, these 18Zs are extremely aggressive, but in this case, they're just two of them are underwhelming, which is not a bad thing. These just look at how much they're just not handling it well. That low pressure icon, it bounces around freaking everywhere. 1 second it's east of the Yucatan Peninsula. Next frame it's still east, and then it just bounces right onto somehow the northwestern side of the Yucatan Peninsula, and then it just bounces into the area of convection on the northwest side. It just keeps on bouncing everywhere. It just bounces everywhere. There's definitely a possibility that we don't see a major hurricane. It's just not likely at this moment. These model runs are definitely not going to be accurate. There's just too much bouncing around happening with our low pressure here, and that's evident with your model runs all the way until this gets to the Gulf, where they finally stop bouncing around, and by then they just don't know what to do. So your HAFS A and B don't intensify it like pretty much at all. So I think it's just too much. These model runs are just too uncertain. They're not good model runs. You can just tell that they didn't initiate correctly. Hopefully, we'll get some better data late tonight and tomorrow. The closer we get, the better data we'll get. We'll start seeing recon into this thing. The stronger it gets, the more these models are going to be able to handle where that low pressure actually is, and the less we'll see all this sickening bouncing around, giving me motion sickness. Look at that low pressure bouncing around so much. So I just don't think it's good model data. Same goes for the HMON. Whilst the HMON is still in line with a near, if not Cat 5 potential, I still just wouldn't trust it for that sole reason of the low pressure. You could see it too. Look at the beginning of the run right here. Look how much it bounces around. So I just really don't think they are handling that intensification phase too well. HMON may be a little too aggressive, while your HAFSA and B may be too conservative there. And here's your H-Wharf. We'll see what that ends up showing. This is typically one of your most aggressive model runs out there. Another thing we could look at, actually, let's go to the HAFSA or we'll go HAFSB real quick. Bring it all the way here. Let's bring it back more. Yeah, I mean, look at that. Hold on. Bring it to... This is what it currently thinks is happening. You could see the current satellite imagery above my face cam versus what the model thinks it actually looks like. It's all sorts of wrong. I mean, it still has a blob of centralized convection, just like our current satellite imagery above my face cam. And in the progression of it, I imagine is just going to be terrible. Like, what? It's just... What? Like, no. Just no. Just no. It's just not good. Let's see if the HMON is any sorts of better at all. Okay, that doesn't have infrared simulated infrared there. So unfortunately we can't. But here's your H-Wharf. See if that did any better. This is what it thinks the current satellite looks like, and it's wrong. So these models just aren't initializing even close to correctly. This is a little bit better. That's closer to what it looks like, but it's still wrong. They're just not going to get a good hold on this thing until it becomes at least a tropical storm. Like I said, the closer we get, the better data we'll end up receiving. So this is probably your most question marked area right in here. Whatever happens here, that's it won't matter a whole lot. You know, if we just see very gradual intensification, it's not going to matter a whole lot to what happens in the Gulf, because really, regardless of what happens, I don't see a way that this doesn't intensify to, you know, a Category 1 and then eventually a Category 2 and 3. So we'll see what happens in this area. I feel like whatever happens in this area is really going to matter for our model runs. But in terms of intensity, even if this thing stayed as like a low-end tropical storm, it'd still be able to intensify into a hurricane as it goes into the Gulf. So we'll just keep a very, very close eye on it and see what happens in the future. See if these models handle this blob of convection correctly or not. That's just going to be a big issue for our models. Our big key factor is going to be what happens here. How does the storm look like in this area as it's leaving the Caribbean going into the Gulf? How does your storm look? Which that will be Wednesday. Tampa, yeah, Tampa, you're definitely going to see the potential for some significant storm surge there. Some localized significant flooding can't be fully ruled out. It depends on how far west this tracks, but currently the Weather Prediction Center is thinking Tampa could see upwards of around 5 to 7 inches of rainfall out there. Damaging winds will most likely be near sustained at tropical storm force near 60 miles per hour, with gusts probably locally higher than that. Unless this takes a very far westward shift. At the moment, I think I think we have a better chance at seeing a more eastward shift, like this going closer towards like Spring Hill. This is really the area that I think our spread is. I see a much better opportunity for this to shift eastward as opposed to westward. I just don't feel like a westward shift is all that likely. Explain how it's wrong. What? I could tell you the hurricane models aren't handling it right. I legit just showed you the simulated infrared satellite imagery. And it's also wrong because the low pressure icon is bouncing around a stupidly amount on those hurricane models. It bounces around from this. You can see it. I could show you it again. But it bounces from like here to here in 3 hours, then up here, then back up in this area, then here. Then you see it go up in this area. Then you see it go closer towards the Yucatan Peninsula. You'll see it slowly move more north. Then on one model run, it bounces back south. It bounces everywhere. It's not consistent at all. I'll show you that right now. I'll show you that right now with how much the low pressure bounces around. So there's your simulated low, and look at it. Now it's gone. Now it's back in this blob. Now it's further south. Now it's more north. Now it's more west. Now it's more west. Now it's more south. Now it's southeast. Now it's more north. Now it's west. Now it's over the Yucatan Peninsula. Now it's east. Now it's north. Not consistent. This thing is so inconsistent, it bounced from north to south. It bounced from north to south. It's just not handling it well at all. And look how much it bounces everywhere. A low pressure doesn't move that much. You're not going to see your low pressure. The eye of a hurricane doesn't go like this. That's not what an eye of a hurricane does. Your HMON model is slightly better with that. You can see how it's more consistent as it goes in the Gulf. However, before the Gulf of Mexico, it still does near the same thing, bouncing it around a lot. Because it can't figure out where that centralized low pressure actually is. So your hurricane models just aren't handling it well in the Caribbean. Maybe they're handling it better in the Gulf of Mexico, but only time will tell with that one. I saw someone say something about Tallahassee. Yeah, Tallahassee. Hurricane force wind speeds are a very real possibility. So you could be looking at sustained wind speeds in Tallahassee near 90, 100 miles per hour. Gusts could be higher than that. Significant to isolated catastrophic flash flooding will be possible in and around that entire landfall location, generally in here. And depending on if it makes landfall more west or east, Tallahassee could even get in on that tornado threat. So you're looking at pretty big impacts for Tallahassee. If this scenario does unfold, remember, it could change. It's going to change. It's just a matter about how much. It could shift way more east to the point where Tallahassee doesn't have to worry about much more than some isolated flooding potential, or it could shift, slightly more east and end up heading directly towards Tallahassee. There's a lot of possibilities there. There's no point in there's no point in like worrying at this moment. Just make sure you're prepared, get preparations finished tomorrow. That's the point. It wouldn't be a depression at that point. It would be a tropical storm. They're forecasting a tropical storm at 2 a.m. And your models bounce all the way around until it enters the Gulf around 8 a.m. on Wednesday. Believe me, I know how a tropical depression forms, dude. I wouldn't be on here just yapping around if I knew nothing about weather. Ooh. Okay. Next update should be very soon. Thank you for reminding me of that. I'm gonna check now, actually. So the NHC already did their how do I put this? I forgot. But they did this outlook. They did their AOI outlook. They did their AOI outlook, but they haven't updated the PTC yet. They haven't updated our PTC. Yeah, they updated the tropical weather outlook, but they have not updated the potential tropical cyclone outlook. So with the update, with the new tropical weather outlook, they've actually given this, if you look here, it was an 80-90. They've now upped it to a 90-90. It doesn't mean a whole lot. I say that because regardless of if they kept that at 80 or 90, I mean, it's still going to form. It's just they increased it for that 10% because it's going to form. They're like, yeah, it's going to form. We're literally forecasting a tropical storm tomorrow, so that's why they put it at 90-90. Because, why not? They are literally forecasting it to form. We'll see if it takes a little bit longer to form into a tropical storm. Sometimes that happens with PTCs, and it takes a little longer to form into a tropical storm. So we'll see if we have it at the 2 a.m. advisory or if we have it at the 2 p.m. advisory. Are you talking about the probabilities here? So the probabilities, this right in here that I just highlighted, that is a 90% chance of it becoming a tropical depression or a tropical storm in the next 48 hours, as well as a 90% chance for a tropical storm or depression in the next 7 days. So basically, it is going to form. Did it reposition its center? It's probably going to reposition it multiple times over the next 12 hours or so. Kind of like what the models are showing, but we should eventually see a closed low stacked in the low and mid levels. And once that happens, that's when our model data is going to get better. I don't know if Recon's going into it tomorrow. I didn't check. I imagine they will. And of course, the closer it gets, the more Recon we're going to actually have into it. Like with Francine, at one point we almost had 3 Recon heading into it at the same time because they were rotating shifts in there. But we'll see. I mean, it's still keeping an eye on it here. So yeah, we're gonna wait and see when they end up getting that that outlook out at 8 o'clock. They did their tropical weather outlook at 8 p.m. or rather at they issued it early. It was what, 7:09? 7:05 is when they put out their tropical weather outlook, which is a whole hour earlier. That might be one of the earliest ones I've seen. 55 minutes early on that. If it's already a tropical storm, what? Hold on. You just said it's a tropical storm, right? What's that say? Oh, potential tropical cyclone. It's not a tropical storm. Does it even have wind speeds of a tropical storm yet? 35 miles per hour? Let's see here. Yeah, but I didn't finish my sentence. It doesn't have wind speeds of a tropical storm yet, so it's legit impossible for it to be a tropical storm at that advisory. Now, the 8 o'clock advisory, we'll see if they do that or not. Texas is fine. Texas is perfectly fine. Please don't worry if you are in Texas. You are perfectly fine. You'll still get some rain. Most likely you're going to get some rain, but nothing like a tropical storm or a hurricane. Nothing like that. Just some isolated rain showers. You're going to have a big old trough over you that's pretty much going to act like a big wall over Texas. But once it gets up into Tennessee, some of those rain bands could still reach towards like northeastern Texas. Thanks to that trough ejection, it could try to wrap it around. But shouldn't see any flooding, wind speeds, none of that, tornadoes, nothing. Nothing like that. Let's see if I go over here. So yeah, I have a software that's pulled up, and it'll let me know when the tropical, or when the PTC 9 gets a new update here. I think it's going to be Advisory 2A. John is very easily Cat 3+. Yeah, for sure. It's been probably a Category 3 ever since they said it was a Category 2. Let's see here. But yeah, that's a different system. Like I said, that's not going to influence future Helene at all. In Galveston, Texas? There's no way. There must be a Galveston, Florida. Yeah, it doesn't say there's a Galveston, Florida, but there may be more localized. It won't pick up on this software. But that might be for a different reason, Michael. I don't really know why. It's definitely not in association to this, to a future Helene. Let's see here. Oh, okay, so that's, let's see, Donna, so that's really far in Northern Virginia. I don't think you're going to see a whole lot out there. It depends on exactly where you are in that area, but like Harrisonburg, this general vicinity up here, you could still see some rainfall impacts. Isolated rainfall totals could approach 5 inches, so you could still see some very isolated flash flooding. 16 seconds ago, or 48 seconds ago, we just got our new National Hurricane Center advisory, and we also got a advisory on John. They still have it as a Category 2, I believe, for John, because it doesn't say major hurricane, but we'll see once that is issued from the NHC's site here. All right, there is the new update for Tropical Cyclone 9. I'm gonna have to wait for the graphics to update though, but we do have it out. I don't think there's a change in pretty much anything in terms of the miles per hour, the pressure, and the movement. Let's see. 6 p.m. So yeah, John's new advisory, they have it at 105 sustained. Very interesting. I really see satellite is way more impressive than 105. But they are the professionals, so it's just I don't know. They can obviously tell better from satellite than me. They kept John at well, they upped it by 5 miles per hour. It's 105. It used to be 100. And PTC 9, I'm gonna wait for the new stuff to be issued here. A hurricane watch is still in place for Cuba and Yucatan Peninsula. Tropical storm watch still in place for the Florida Keys. And then tropical storm warnings, or tropical storm watches in place for Key West, is what I meant to say. Tropical storm warnings still in effect for western Cuba, far eastern peninsula of the Yucatan Peninsula there. Messed up my wording a bit. Let's see. And they'll be doing a full advisory at 11 o'clock, which is what I was expecting. No change to the storm surge forecast. Yeah, isolated amounts upwards of a foot of rainfall near the landfall location will be possible. And I forgot if they update the cone. Okay, they did update the cone, and it's still forecasted to be a major hurricane. They probably kept that at just low-end major hurricane status at 115 for the forecast there. Let's see. Yeah, there's your new cone of uncertainty. I don't think we had much change there. It seems relatively the same. I don't see much change. But there you go. That is your new advisory. Interesting. So, the National Hurricane Center, their tag here, it says it's expected to become a hurricane by Wednesday. But obviously, here's your point, 2 a.m. on Wednesday, and you can see it's a tropical storm. So I think they maybe a typo. I'm not for sure. Maybe they meant to say hurricane on Wednesday. It's expected to be a hurricane on Wednesday because by Wednesday, in my opinion, is before it hits midnight on, Wednesday morning. We thinking about evacuations out of Texas. There's no point. Texas is fine. Let's see here. Is the H4 for a reliable hurricane model? It does typically overdo intensity quite often, but it is a hurricane model, so no models are really reliable. Like, you're not going to find a model run better than the NHC. The NHC, they take all the model run data and interpret it into a simple graphic for you, but the HWRF is still a good model. It just typically overdoes intensity a bit. There's a chance the cone shifted a bit. I don't see any major change in the cone. The landfall location still looks to be right barely southwest of Tallahassee. It still looks like the far southeastern edge barely clips northwest of Tallahassee. Far western side of the cone doesn't get to Pensacola, so it looks like very minimal changes. Yeah, I really don't see any changes to the cone. All right, we're starting to get our model runs with the landfall now, your 18Z hurricane models here. So this is your H-Wharf model run, which is the one you were just talking about. And that is gradual. It has gradual intensification until it gets towards just to the east of the Yucatan Peninsula into the Gulf. At this point here, it is most likely a high in Category 1 hurricane. And then you can see it begins that rapid intensification process all the way to a major hurricane here on the morning of Thursday. And this is as far out as it goes at the moment on the H-Wharf model. Now, the H-Mon model, which is my personal favorite hurricane model, is very aggressive. This might be the most aggressive hurricane model on the 18Z runs here. That takes really rapid strengthening near a Category 2, probably a Category 2 hurricane as it enters the Gulf and then rapidly intensifies into a major hurricane. And this particular one most likely shows a high in Cat 4 to Category 5, making landfall in Florida. That is definitely... We'll see if the other ones are aggressive, but that's definitely the most aggressive one I've seen out of the 18Z runs so far. We'll see if HAFSA is any more aggressive. You already saw there that it wasn't. Like I said, it just seems like it jumps around a lot on the HAFSA and B model run, but still the HAFSA has a Category 2 landfall, probably mid-tier Cat 2. And HAFSB has a right around with that mid-tier Category 2 landfall as well. And that's all your 18Z hurricane models. So, yeah, that was your NHC update, all your hurricane models. I mean, we could look at the GFS one, but like I said, that is a global model, which is typically less accurate with when you see that invest or the PTC get designated. It does still have that more gradual intensification. So there's two scenarios here. I mean, most of our models, though, this time, I will say most of our models kind of have that that more passive, more conservative approach to it, aside from the H1. The H-Wharf is definitely more aggressive as well. But your HAFSB, HAFSA, obviously, like we saw there, the GFS, those are all showing more of a mid-tier Cat 2 landfall. Your H-Mon shows a high in Cat 4, low in Cat 5, and we'll see what the H-Wharf has, which at this frame here, H-Wharf would have a, this would most likely be a Category 4. Let's see here. I wish I could zoom out on these model runs. Unfortunately, on this site, it forces you to have it zoomed in this much. But yeah, there's your H-Wharf model that has a high in Cat 4, most likely Cat 5 landfall as well. So kind of split there. Your two main hurricane models that most people know, your H1 and your H-Wharf, both have high in Cat 4's Cat 5 landfalls. But then your HAFSA and B both have disorganized mid-tier Cat 2 landfalls. I do want to note the location. So that's H-Wharf. So that's just southwest of Tallahassee, kind of like the NHC's forecast. The H-Mon here is, that may even be southeast of Tallahassee for landfall. Your HAFSA is south of Tallahassee, and your HAFSB is also southwest of Tallahassee. So outlier for landfall there is, what did I say, your H-Mon model? Yeah, your H-Mon model is just a very tad bit more east than your other hurricane models. Not that too far off. So no major shifts in terms of track on your hurricane models, but definitely a wide variety of intensity between the H-Mon, H-Wharf, and your HAFS A and B models. How's Pensacola looking? So at the moment, you're looking pretty good. Most of the models, as well as the official NHC forecast, are all forecasting well off to your east. So you're looking pretty good. Jordan, yeah, I do think they're going to change a bit. I don't expect any drastic change from what the NHC is forecasting. Their track's going to change slightly west and east with time, or they may keep it generally the same. And the intensity, I don't know what they'll do with that. So there's definitely some there's definitely some changes we're going to see over the next 3 days as we get closer to landfall, but I don't expect any massive changes. So right now, I fully agree with the NHC on a low-end Category 3 landfall. Like I said, if the ceiling here, we all know the ceiling is a Category 5. It's the Gulf of Mexico in peak hurricane season with favorable ingredients. So the ceiling, worst case scenario, we all know is Cat 5. Most likely scenario is going to be a very high-end Cat 2 to low-end Cat 3 at this moment. Shown here by the NHC is a low-end Cat 3. So, like I said, if you are out here in this cone of uncertainty, prepare for that potential worst case scenario and hope for the best. It's always better to prepare for the worst case scenario just in case, unfortunately, it does happen. And of course, we always want to hope for the best here. This site here is Radar Omega. It's a radar software. Wind for northwestern Georgia. Probably won't be that rough out there. You're probably looking at sustained wind speeds near 20 miles per hour with gusts slightly higher than that. I'm just basing that off of the NHC's depression prediction here. Your main threat up there in northwest Georgia will probably be, like you just said there, flooding, actually. Most likely flooding will be your biggest issue. And to give you a idea of that, you could see rainfall amounts right around 5 inches up there. Southeast Alabama, that's a little bit of a trickier one. You could see near hurricane force wind speeds there. You could see upwards of 90 mile per hour winds out there in far southeast Alabama. It's going to depend on exactly where the track is, but if you are in southeast Alabama, southern Georgia, this area here, I would be watching it because later down the line, you could be introduced to some potential hurricane impacts out there. In terms of flash flooding, the main flash flooding potential is, I'm drawing this off of the WPC. It's generally out in this area for your main flooding potential. Alright, see you later, Darian. Connor, what? Our Chaser's going live? Probably for a drive. He's probably going to stream a good chunk of the... Probably like 3-4 hours for a drive here. Oh, wow, he's doing a briefing, actually. Connor jumped into the forecasting side of things on YouTube. That's interesting. I'm in Crawfordville. Should I put up a windmill? Is that Crawfordville, Florida? Oh man, I mean you're definitely in those impacts, that's for sure. So, in all seriousness, you definitely need to be preparing today and tomorrow for sure. I mean, it's gonna be windy out there. That is for sure. I don't think it's going to shift so far east to the point where you won't see wind impacts in Crawfordville. Right now, Crawfordville is in the direct track of a major hurricane. Atlanta will not be seeing hurricane force wind gust. I'd be very surprised with that. You said the H-Mon shows that, though? You're right. Yeah, the H-Mon has near hurricane force wind gust in northeastern Georgia. Wow. I wouldn't go off of that. I would go off the NHC's forecast. The H-Mon may be slightly too far to the east with the inland track. There's still some uncertainties we need to work out. I mean, it's going to be difficult projecting where this landfall could be. So down the line towards like northeastern Georgia, there's just a lot of uncertainty. That's the thing you have to remember is for northeastern Georgia, I mean, we're still like near 4 or 5 days out for you guys out there. 30 inches of rain? Jeez. Oh, in the last 30 days, we've gotten 17 inches of rain. I see. Oh, my bad. That is a lot of rain. I bet I've barely even seen that much rainfall in the entire season here in Southern Virginia. All right, I don't think we have many more. Yeah, I don't really think we have any models to go over here. So, um, yeah, I know there's a lot of people watching for sure, and I really, really appreciate it, but I don't want to waste y'all's time staying here for longer than I have to, and save some energy for when we're needed for a while. Because Thursday's going to be probably Thursday is going to end up being a long live stream, and you know for a fact we'll be right back here tomorrow with a live weather briefing. There is a small chance I end up chasing out here in Virginia, but regardless, I'm still going to go live for a briefing at some point tomorrow. So make sure you guys have hit that subscribe button with a notification bell set to all, because I will be live again tomorrow. And hit that like button if you haven't already. We're at 135 likes. It helps to share the live stream and the channel. And yeah, if you know anybody out here in Florida, inside this cone of uncertainty, or even in the western side of Florida, share them the live stream and get them up to date with the latest information. So the NHC did just update. I don't know if that's your new cone from Radar Omega here. I guess that's your new update from Radar Omega's cone of uncertainty, which is still from the NHC. Yeah, because you can see the cone did shift very slightly west, closer towards the Yucatan Peninsula. So they did barely shift that cone more west. And they're still saying the low pressure is generally right in here, with just a lot of convection on the northeastern side, east-northeast side. It's gradually getting more organized, yes. And it should stay gradually organizing here for the next 24 hours until we get towards like Wednesday morning. That's when it should start becoming rapid. Let me go over here. Yeah, you can see they still have John at Cat 2. I'm very surprised by that, honestly. Maybe it's because it's such a tiny hurricane. But I don't know. Sometimes these smaller hurricanes, they can intensify even faster because of their pinhole eye. Water temperatures aren't an issue. I can just tell you that one in terms of intensification with this storm. They are definitely not an issue. The only issue in terms of intensification we'll have is how fast that low pressure can be organized and get convection around the entire low pressure, which is what, you know, your that's what your HAFSA and B are struggling with. If you look at this here. So you see they never really consolidate a whole entire area of convection around that low pressure. You can see it gets to it here on September 26th. It tries, but it never fully, completely closes it off. It tries a couple times on these frames, but it just never really completely succeeds. And if that happens, we won't see a phase of extreme rapid intensification to where we go from like tropical storm to category 3. But even if we don't see that well closed off low, we would still see that gradual intensification to at least a mid to high end Cat 2. A model that shows that low pressure being fully confined by convection is the H-Wharf. You'll see it fully close it off right there, 2 a.m. on the 26th. And once it closes that off, from there on out, it's just rapid intensification to a Cat 5. So we'll see how fast it can close off that low pressure and have a whole well-rounded area of convection around it. East Central Alabama, you do want to watch. Depending on the time frame, we could end up seeing a tornado threat out there. Some isolated damaging winds from the overall at the point it gets to east central Alabama, it would probably be pretty weak into like a tropical depression, borderline tropical storm. Oh, my bad. Hold on. I'm sorry. Forget what I said. I mixed up my states. Southeastern Alabama. Duh. I mixed up my states. Yeah, so you're gonna definitely need to watch it. Man, yeah, you need to watch it. We could end up with hurricane force wind speeds out there if you're in like Dothan, Enterprise, out in this area, far southeast Alabama. You definitely want to watch it. I don't know why I was thinking this area, far southeast Georgia. My goodness, I meant to... Alabama's right here. Yeah, definitely watch it. Some flash flooding potential, damaging wind speeds up to hurricane force, which would be sustained wind speeds near probably 90 with gusts higher than that. And some isolated flooding will be possible. It just depends in eastern NC. I'm not too sure about what's going to happen out there, but we'll just continue to watch models. Right now, the NHC is pretty confident on the main low pressure going west of like central North Carolina. But I will still keep an eye on it. You could definitely end up with some isolated gusty winds, but probably the main threat will be flooding in North Carolina. Little east of Montgomery, yeah. I would still keep an eye out for some low-end hurricane wind gusts and tropical storm force wind gusts, but it's going to come down to where this storm makes landfall, because if it makes landfall south of Tallahassee and then moves up like this, you're unfortunately going to be in trouble for some of that damaging wind potential. I just simply let your family know going into Friday, you know, a very late Thursday, especially into Friday, that you could see some gusty winds and very heavy rainfall. But yeah, I think we're going to go ahead and conclude it. We're going to go ahead and conclude it, y'all. I'll be back here tomorrow. I appreciate you guys tuning in. If you're just now tuning in, we're starting to wrap up the live stream. You are very much welcome to rewatch the live stream. We went through all of the information, and hopefully you guys found this quite informative. I greatly appreciate you guys helping me reach over 3,000 people with the word of this hurricane, and potentially, or I should say eventually, going to be a major hurricane. And on your way out, if you can, hit that like button, share this stream and channel with family, friends, social media. And if you want to tune into tomorrow's live stream, make sure you hit that subscribe button with the notification bell set to all so you know when I go live or upload a video. Of course, videos aren't going to come out anytime soon until this system's done. Our winter forecast will be out on October 4th at 6 p.m. Eastern. For those who are interested in winter, October 4th at 6 p.m. Eastern, we'll have our winter forecast out. But yeah, that is going to be it. Stay safe, watch severe weather, and especially watch the tropics. Also, for the latest information, you can simply type in National Hurricane Center in your browser, and that will update. They'll update every 3 hours now, thanks to that designated PTC, which is Potential Tropical Cyclone. Have a great rest of your night. Thank you, mods, for mod and chat. Goodbye. Stay safe, watch severe weather in the tropics. I'll see you guys in tomorrow's